Explainer. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the relationship between the United States and Europe. For, 70 plus years, we've always heard it called a partnership. But what if it's something a whole lot more complicated? For decades, the official story has been about a partnership of shared values. But the material we're digging into today asks a much more pointed question. Has it ever really been a partnership of equals? So to really get to the bottom of this, we have to look past the photo ops. Just think about the public ideal versus the documented reality. We learned that the NSA was tapping the personal cell phone of German Chancellor Angela Merkel, a key U.S. ally. And that's just a recent example. The roots of this whole dynamic go way, way back. Okay, so our story really kicks off in the rubble of World War II. The fear of Soviet expansion became the justification for this massive, unprecedented American military and intelligence footprint in Europe. And that presence? Well, it laid the groundwork for a totally new kind of power dynamic. And the mission was crystal clear: keep Western Europe firmly out of the Soviet orbit. Now, this meant stopping communist parties from getting a foothold in government, even if they were popular, and even if they were on track to win fair and square in an election. To pull that off, Washington basically wrote a whole new playbook for intervention. And here's where it gets really interesting. Just look at the sheer scale of these operations. According to one former CIA officer cited in our source, $65 million is what the agency spent on political ops in Italy alone between 1948 and 68. I mean, that was an absolutely mind-boggling amount of money back then. And that 1948 Italian election, it pretty much became the blueprint for everything that followed. The CIA poured tons of money to the Christian Democrats, they ran these really sophisticated propaganda campaigns, and even dangled Marshall Plan aid as a kind of economic leverage. All of it was designed to make sure the very popular Italian Communist Party went down in defeat. And none of this was happening by accident. There was an official architecture for intervention being built, piece by piece. The CIA is born in 1947. Then, just a year later, a top-secret directive called NSC 10/2 basically gives the agency a green light for covert ops. We're talking everything from propaganda to straight-up political sabotage, all over the world. But here's the thing. Influencing elections was just the stuff you could, eventually find out about. The source material we're looking at points to something much deeper, a much more unsettling layer of operations that was happening completely in the shadows. So let's define a term you've probably never heard: Operation Gladio. This was a whole network of secret stay-behind armies. They were coordinated by NATO, backed by the CIA, and they were operating all across Western Europe, often without the governments of those countries even knowing they existed. Now, according to official Italian parliamentary inquiries, parts of this network were involved in this horrifying pattern they called the strategy of tension. It was like a four-step recipe for chaos. First, a violent attack happens. Immediately, left-wing groups get the blame. Then, the public gets scared and demands law and order, which pushes the whole political system hard to the right. And this so-called strategy is now linked to some of the absolute worst atrocities in post-war Italy, like the bombing of the Bologna train station that killed 85 innocent people. In case after case, the initial blame fell on the left, but then, decades later, investigations would uncover these disturbing links to neo-fascist groups who themselves were connected to state security. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but all this crazy stuff must have ended when the Berlin Wall came down, right? Well, the analysis here argues that the playbook didn't just vanish. Nope, it just evolved with new targets and brand new tools for a new century. So the focus shifted. Instead of fighting communism, the new targets, according to the source, became things like the European Union itself and the broader push for more progressive social values that was sweeping across the continent. And this slide just perfectly illustrates that shift in tactics. The old way, secret bags of cash for center-right parties, was replaced. The new way, support for populist networks, sophisticated data analytics for things like the Brexit campaign, and a whole lot of disinformation aimed right at the heart of the EU. Our source points to this whole new network of American political strategists, foundations, and media figures who are actively building ties with and supporting far-right and populist movements all over Europe. It's like a new transatlantic alliance of nationalists. So after walking through this whole history, from covert cash in the 40s all the way to data analytics today, we have to come back to that central question we started with. What is the real nature of this transatlantic partnership? Now, to be fair, the source does acknowledge the counterarguments. European nations are, on paper, sovereign. They get real security benefits from the alliance, and everything is based on treaties. But you have to weigh that against the mountain of evidence of, well, structural domination that we've just been looking at. So here it is, the crucial takeaway from this analysis. The relationship isn't a simple partnership, but it's not a total occupation either. It's something much murkier, something the source calls constrained sovereignty. A state where you have formal independence, but your real freedom to act is limited by the structure of the alliance itself. And that leaves us with a final, really challenging thought. The patterns we've seen here, from secret armies to digital disinformation, they aren't just about Europe. They raise a fundamental question for all of us. In a world of invisible networks and borderless influence, what does it actually mean for any country to be truly sovereign anymore?